Number one is basically a cactus that flowers. You forget to water it. You leave it baking in the hottest, ugliest corner of your balcony, and it blooms harder, like it's doing it out of spite. I've killed a shocking number of plants. A pothos the whole internet swears is unkillable. 3 different beginner succulents. 1 very sad basil that I genuinely think just gave up on me one Tuesday. The one plant that ever survived me on purpose was a snake plant my brother gave me. And that's the plant that made me wonder if maybe the problem wasn't me. It was my plant choices. But this number one? This one refused to die even when I gave it every excuse. The catch is timing. If you want it spilling out of a pot this summer, you've got to get it going before July, or you miss the window for a full season of blooms. So today, I'm counting down 15 flowers that survive people exactly like us. The busy ones, the forgetful ones, the ones who mean well and then disappear for 2 weeks. No green thumb required, no fancy tools, no guilt. Just a pot, some dirt, and the bar set comfortably, reassuringly low. Let's get into it. Number 15, Sweet Alyssum, Lobularia maritima. We're starting gentle. Alyssum. This is the flower you grow when you want to feel like a gardener without doing any actual gardener things. You scatter the seeds across the top of a pot, press them in lightly. They need a little light to germinate, so don't bury them. And in about 2 to 3 weeks, you've got this low cloud of tiny white or purple flowers that honestly smells like honey on a warm afternoon. Bees and hoverflies love it, which quietly helps every other plant nearby get pollinated. Here's the part for people like me. Alyssum forgives. A small pot, 4 to 6 hours of sun, water when the top of the soil feels dry. That's the entire job. It even shrugs off a bit of shade, which matters if your only outdoor spot is half blocked by a neighbor's railing. The classic beginner mistake is loving it to death, overwatering it into a soggy, mushy mess, because more attention feels like more care. It isn't. The second thing nobody tells you, Alyssum often stalls and goes leggy in peak summer heat, and people assume it's dying and toss it. Don't. Give it a quick haircut, shear it back by about 1/3 with scissors, and it flushes out with a whole new wave of flowers once the weather eases. Plant it before July, and that cut and recover cycle keeps it going right up to your first frost. One more practical thing, because this is where Alyssum really earns its spot. It's the perfect spiller in a mixed pot. Plant it around the rim of a container with something taller in the center, a snapdragon, say, and it softens the whole edge and hides gaps you'd otherwise just have to stare at. And if scent is what you're after, reach for the old-fashioned white varieties. The colored ones are prettier, but the plain white ones tend to smell the sweetest on a warm evening. Low effort, high forgiveness, and a great confidence builder before we get to the heavy hitters. Number 14, Calendula, Calendula officinalis. And yes, this is technically pot marigold, but it's a completely different plant from the tagetes marigolds we'll get to later. So don't get them confused, because it actually matters for one reason I'll explain. Calendula is cheerful, orange and gold, grows from seed like it's late for something, and the petals are genuinely edible. People scatter them over salads to look fancy, and you can dry them for tea. I mostly grow it because it asks for almost nothing and looks like sunshine. It prefers cooler weather, so getting it into a pot before the real July heat gives it a proper head start. And in midsummer, a spot with morning sun and afternoon shade keeps it blooming instead of crisping. A medium pot, well-draining soil, water when the top inch dries out. The one trick that doubles your flowers is deadheading. Pinch off the spent, fading blooms, and every time you do, you're telling the plant to make a new flower instead of going to seed. Skip it, and it still grows, just slower. Two more useful things. First, calendula reseeds itself easily. Leave a few flowers to dry at the end of the season, and you'll often get free volunteers next year. Second, and this is the reason the calendula versus marigold distinction matters. Calendula is non-toxic to cats and dogs according to the ASPCA. So if your household includes a furry idiot who taste tests your pots, mine does, this is one of the safe ones. We genuinely cannot say that about everything on this list. One last tip. If you want maximum flowers for minimum effort, pick the shorter, bushier calendula varieties bred for containers rather than the tall, cutting types that flop over the side of a pot. And don't write the plant off when it slows down in the dog days of summer. Calendula very often takes a heat break and then comes roaring back in the cooler weeks of early fall. So a plant that looks finished in August is usually just resting and waiting you out. Number 13, Cosmos, Cosmos bipinnatus. Cosmos is the plant equivalent of throwing seeds at some dirt and getting a bouquet back. I'm not exaggerating. This is one of the easiest flowers you will ever grow. Tall, airy, feathery foliage with simple pink, white, and magenta daisy-like flowers floating on top like they're barely attached. In a pot on a balcony, swaying in the slightest breeze, they look effortlessly pretty, which is fitting, because they basically are effortless. Here's the counterintuitive part that makes Cosmos perfect for us. It actually prefers poor soil and being ignored. Plant it in rich potting mix and feed it like you're entering a county fair, and you'll get a giant leafy bush and almost no flowers. It just grows foliage and quietly judges your effort. So skip the fertilizer entirely. Give it a deeper pot because it can get tall, full sun, and water only when the soil's dry. The one real problem is flopping. The tall types get top-heavy and lean, so either choose a dwarf or sonata type bred for containers, or push a thin bamboo stake in early and loosely tie the stems. Pinch the growing tip when the plant is young too, and it branches into a fuller, bushier plant with more blooms instead of one tall stalk. Plant before July for flowers right up to frost, and at the end of the season, snip a few dry seed heads into an envelope. That's next year's Cosmos, completely free. Quick variety steer so you don't accidentally make life hard. The Sonata and Sonata Dwarf series stay compact and bushy and are made for pots, while the classic Sensation types reach 4 feet and will absolutely topple a balcony container in a stiff wind. And here's a small reassurance. If your Cosmos suddenly looks a little sparse midsummer, it's almost always because it's quietly setting seed, not dying. Snip those finished flowers off, and it redirects all that energy straight back into new blooms. Still, nothing on this list yet touches number 1. We're getting closer. Number 12, Nasturtium, Tropaeolum majus. Nasturtium is a plant that genuinely does better when you neglect it, which I find personally validating. Rich soil makes it lazy about flowering and obsessed with pumping out leaves. Honestly, relatable. So you plant it in average or even poor soil. You don't fertilize. And it rewards you with bright orange, red, and yellow flowers and round lily pad leaves that trail over the edge of the pot like it pays rent there. Both the leaves and the flowers are edible, with a peppery, almost arugula-like bite that's great in a salad. The seeds are big, like little wrinkled chickpeas, so they're easy to push into the soil with one finger about ½ an inch deep, which makes this a brilliant one if you've got kids, or if you just like instant foolproof gratification. It handles part shade, shrugs off a missed watering, and asks for very little. The mistake, again, is kindness. People plant it in fancy fertilized mix and then wonder where all the flowers went. Now you know, starve it a little and it blooms its head off. One more practical bonus. Nasturtium is a known trap crop, meaning aphids often flock to it and leave your other plants alone, so it can quietly protect the rest of your pots. Get it in before July. Give it something to spill over, and it cascades all summer. 2 quick picks to know. The climbing types will scramble up a small trellis or railing if you want height, while the compact bush or dwarf types like Tom Thumb stay tidy and mounded for a smaller pot. Check the packet so you get the shape you actually want. And one honest heads up so you're not surprised. Those big peppery leaves are catnip for aphids. That's mostly a feature, since they pull aphids away from your other plants. But if it bothers you, a quick blast of water from the sink knocks them right off. Cheap, edible, nearly impossible to mess up. Number 11. Snapdragon, Antirrhinum majus. Snapdragons. These are the flowers you squeezed as a kid to make the little dragon mouth open and close. Turns out they're far tougher than they look. And in a pot, they throw up tall spikes absolutely packed with flowers from bottom to top. They bring height and vertical structure to a container, which almost none of these spreading, trailing flowers do. So one pot of snapdragons in the middle of a cluster makes the whole arrangement look intentional. They like it on the cooler side, so planting before peak summer is smart. They bloom hard in late spring and early summer, sometimes pause in brutal heat, then come roaring back as it cools into fall. Full sun to part shade, a pot with good drainage, and steady-ish water. The mistake here is the feast or famine cycle, letting them bake bone dry and then drowning them. They want consistent, not dramatic. 2 tips that genuinely change your results. 1. Pinch the tops out when the plants are young. Just nip the growing tip. And instead of one lonely stalk, you get a bushy plant with 5 or 6 flower spikes. 2. When a spike finishes blooming, cut the whole thing off near the base, and the plant pushes out fresh side shoots and reblooms. 10 seconds of effort, weeks of extra flowers, and a variety note that saves a lot of confusion. Snapdragons come in dwarf, medium, and tall classes. For a pot, you want the dwarf or medium types. Floral showers or snapshot are reliable, because the tall florist varieties need staking and really belong in a garden bed, not on a windy 6th floor balcony. Healthy snapdragons look full and stocky with deep green leaves. If yours is stretching tall and pale with big gaps between the leaves, it's reaching for light. So move it somewhere brighter. Sub-CTA. Saukida Yaojatri Nummuk. Quick thing before we keep going. If you've ever killed a plant, or like me, an entire windowsill of them, and you want a whole channel that just assumes that about you, hit subscribe. No shame, no jargon, no 12-step soil routines. Just plants that survive real, distracted human life. Okay. Number 10. Petunia, Petunia cross hybrida. Petunias are the classic container flower, and there's a reason every garden center drowns in them every single spring. Non-stop color, all summer, in basically any pot. They cascade, they fill, they spill over hanging baskets in waves of purple, pink, red, and white. Now, the old-school grandiflora types needed constant deadheading to keep blooming, which is an instant deal-breaker for our people. But here's the upgrade that changes everything. The modern spreading varieties, the ones sold as wave or supertunia style, are self-cleaning. They drop their spent flowers on their own and just keep going without you. Buy those. Read the tag. It's the single most important choice you'll make with this plant. Give them sun, at least 5 or 6 hours, a pot with drainage, and a drink when the top of the soil dries out. I'll be honest, in hot weather in a small pot, this is the thirstiest plant on the list, and that's the main way people lose them. So size up your pot. The bigger the pot, the more soil, the more water it holds, and the less often you're standing out there with a watering can cursing. A pot that's too small dries out in a single hot afternoon and stresses the plant into quitting on you. One feeding tip, since petunias actually do like a little food, unlike some of our starvation candidates. A diluted liquid fertilizer every couple of weeks keeps them flowering hard. Here's the rescue move nobody tells beginners. If your petunia goes leggy by midsummer, long bare stems with a few sad flowers stranded at the tips, don't replace it. Cut the whole plant back by about a third, give it a feed, and in 2 weeks, it bushes out and reblooms like it's brand new. That one haircut is the difference between a great-looking pot in September and a tangled mess you throw away. Get them in before July, and they'll pour over the edges until fall. Number 9. Celosia, Celosia argentea. Celosia looks like flame and acts like it too. You've got the plume types that look like feathery torches, and the crested types that look like brain coral or a rooster's comb. Genuinely weird, bold, unforgettable in a pot, and a great pick if you're tired of everything looking soft and pastel. And the key trait for us, the hotter and brighter your spot, the happier this plant is. If your balcony turns into a frying pan in July, while everyone else's flowers wilt and complain, Celosia just stands there glowing. It wants full sun, warm soil, and good drainage. And once it's established, it barely asks for water. Do not plant it out too early. It genuinely hates cold and sulks, even rots, if the nights are still chilly, so warm season planting is exactly right. The mistake people make is the opposite of most plants on this list. They put it somewhere shady and damp to protect it, and that's the one way to kill a celosia. Give it heat and light, and then mostly ignore it. 2 bonuses. First, the colors are so saturated they almost look artificial, but they're completely real, no filter. Second, celosia dries beautifully. Cut a few stems near the end of the season, hang them upside down in a closet for a couple of weeks, and you've got bold, dried flowers that hold their color all winter. A pot tip. The dwarf plume types like Fresh Look or Kimono stay compact and bloom for months without any staking, which is exactly what you want in a container. And if you're ever unsure whether yours needs water, check the leaves. Celosia tells on itself by going slightly limp when it's genuinely thirsty, then perks right back up within an hour of a drink, so you never have to guess or overwater. Tough outdoors, useful indoors. Number 8. Dwarf sunflower, Helianthus annuus, dwarf types. Yes, you can absolutely grow sunflowers in a pot. Not the 15-foot monsters from the seed packet fantasy, but the dwarf varieties that top out around 1 to 2 feet and still give you that big, goofy, cheerful face. Seed to bloom is fast, often around 60 days, so planting before July is perfect timing for a late summer show. And there's just something about a sunflower on a tiny balcony that resets your whole mood. It's genuinely hard to be in a bad mood while looking at one. Here's where I'll be honest with you, because it's the thing nobody tells beginners. Sunflowers have deep taproots, so the number one way people fail is a pot that's too shallow. Give a dwarf sunflower a pot at least 10 to 12 inches deep, full sun, it's in the name, and water fairly regularly while it's growing, because that's the one real demand it makes. Do that, and the rest takes care of itself. A second tip: sow 2 or 3 seeds and keep the strongest seedling, because not every seed comes up, and you don't want a sad, empty pot. And a little story. The first time I grew one of these, my roommate's cat, Noodle, knocked the entire pot clean off the railing the day before it was due to open. I was genuinely upset. I propped it back up, fully expecting a funeral, and it bloomed 2 days later like absolutely nothing had happened. That was one more tough little plant quietly proving the point my brother's snake plant first made. Some plants are just built to survive people like me. Which actually brings me to a question for you. Drop it in the comments. What's the most stubborn plant that has survived you? The one that should have died and just refused? I read every one of these and I steal the best ones for future videos. Tell me your survivor. Okay, number 7. Annual salvia, Salvia splendens/farinacea. Salvia throws up these spikes of intense red or electric blue that hummingbirds and bees completely lose their minds over. If you want a pot that doubles as a tiny wildlife show, hummingbirds hovering on your balcony in the morning, this is the one. And it's genuinely drought-tolerant once it settles in, which is exactly why it earns a place on a list for forgetful people. The pattern with salvia is simple and worth memorizing because it applies to a lot of these. Needy for 2 weeks, independent for the rest of summer. Plant it. Water it consistently while the roots establish, and then you can ease way off. Full sun, decent drainage, and an occasional deadhead, snip the finished spikes to push a fresh round. The mistake is treating it like a thirsty plant forever. Once it's rooted in, soggy soil does more damage than a dry spell ever will. One variety tip: the blue Victoria type stays compact and tidy, which is ideal for a pot, while the big red bedding types can get floppy, so check the label for height. Bonus, like a few others here, blue salvia dries well and keeps its color, so you can bring a little summer indoors when the season ends. One more reason it belongs on a lazy list. Salvia is one of the most reliable plants for a thriller, filler, spiller pot. It's the upright thriller in the center, and you can ring it with alyssum or trailing petunias and have a complete professional-looking container that, between us, took about 4 minutes to plant. And if the hummingbirds are why you're growing it, go for the red varieties specifically. They're drawn to red far more than blue, so the color you pick literally decides what shows up. Get it in before July and it feeds pollinators right through to fall. Number 6. Geranium, pelargonium. Geraniums, the classic ones, pelargoniums, are drought tough in a way that's almost custom built for us. They'd genuinely rather you underwater than fuss. Bright clusters of red, pink, white, or coral, that timeless window box look, and they bounce back from a dry spell like nothing happened, partly because they store a little water in those thick, slightly succulent stems. Full sun, a pot with drainage, water only when the soil's dry an inch down, and pinch or snap off the spent flower clusters to keep them blooming. The common mistake is, predictably, constant watering, which rots the roots and the base of the stem. Let them dry between drinks and they're thrilled. Now the honest safety note, and this one genuinely matters. Geraniums are toxic to cats and dogs according to the ASPCA, capable of causing vomiting and skin irritation. So if your household has a noodle in it, like mine does, keep these up high, on a shelf or a railing the cat can't reach. Worth growing, just be smart about placement. And here's the tip that saves you money every single year. Geraniums are not truly annual. Before the first frost, cut them back. Bring the pot to a bright indoor windowsill. Water sparingly through winter, and you'll have the same plant, bigger, next spring. Free geraniums year after year, and if you want even more plants for $0, geraniums root almost embarrassingly easily from cuttings. Snip a 4-inch piece of stem, strip the lower leaves, poke it into damp soil, and most of the time it just becomes a new plant. One geranium can quietly turn into the whole balcony's worth over a season or two. They also come in scented leaf types, rose, lemon, mint, that release their fragrance when you brush past them, which is a small daily luxury for a plant this indestructible. Retease number 1. Still tough, but not number 1 tough. Hang on. Number 5. Vinca/annual periwinkle, Catharanthus roseus. If geranium is drought tough, vinca laughs at the entire concept of summer. This is annual vinca, catharanthus, not the trailing ground cover kind, but the upright bedding plant with glossy, deep green leaves and clean five-petaled flowers in pink, white, and red, often with a contrasting eye in the center. When it's 100 degrees out and every other flower on your balcony is face down and defeated, vinca is sitting there glossy and blooming like the heat is a personal favor you arranged for it. It genuinely thrives on heat and drought. And here's the single most important rule, because it's the one mistake that kills it. Do not overwater it. Vinca despises wet feet and cool, damp conditions. That's what causes the root rot that takes it out, not neglect. So wait until the weather is reliably warm to plant it. Water sparingly, give it full sun, and let it bake. It practically runs itself. One real caution though, vinca is toxic if eaten. It contains alkaloids that are genuinely not pet or kid-friendly. So once again, up high if you've got animals or little ones around. Treat it like the beautiful, slightly dangerous house guest it is. A buying tip. Vinca is one plant I'd actually grab as a transplant rather than start from seed, because the seed is slow and fussy about warmth, while a six-pack of starts from the garden center gives you instant foolproof color. And don't confuse it with trailing vinca, the vine kind sold for spilling out of baskets. That's a different plant. The one you want for heat-proof upright blooms is the annual bedding catharanthus. For a hot, forgotten, south-facing corner where nothing else will live, almost nothing blooms as reliably with as little help from you. Number 4. Lantana camara. Lantana is a neglect machine. Dense clusters of tiny flowers that often shift color as they age. So a single rounded cluster might be yellow, orange, and pink all at once. And butterflies descend on it like it's an open buffet. It blooms relentlessly through heat that flattens almost everything else, and it barely sips water once established. On a hot, sunny patio, it is close to unstoppable, and it'll get woody and shrub-like, giving you a lot of plant for very little effort. Full sun, a pot with good drainage, water while it's young, and then back way off. Because like several plants here, too much water and rich soil actually reduce the flowering. A little tough love gives you more color, not less. If it ever gets straggly mid-season, shear it back by a third, and it rebounds bushier and covered in fresh blooms. Now the real talk safety note, because this is a big one. Lantana is toxic to cats, dogs, and livestock, and the unripe green berries are especially poisonous. They are not snacks for anyone, human or animal. So this is firmly a keep it up high, out of reach plant if you've got pets or kids. I know I keep repeating the safety thing, but it's because the toughest flowers and the safest flowers are not always the same plant, and you genuinely deserve to know which is which before you bring it home. Handled with a little common sense, Lantana will outbloom everything around it all summer. A couple of pro notes. In the warmest parts of the country, Lantana can be invasive in the ground, so keeping it in a pot is actually the responsible move as well as the easy one. Look for the more compact, mounding varieties like the bandana or luscious series for containers. And if you want the butterflies, the classic yellow and orange types pull them in harder than the solid pinks. If it stops blooming in high summer, the usual culprit is too much water or too little sun. Pull back the can and push it into the brightest spot you've got. Re-tease number 1. And it's still not the toughest thing on this list. Number 3. Marigold, Tagetes. Marigolds, the real Tagetes marigolds, the bright gold and orange ones, are the plant they hand you in kindergarten because they are almost impossible to mess up. Fast from seed, blooming in just a few weeks, cheerful, and they keep going and going right up to frost. If you have never successfully grown a flower in your entire life, you start here, and you rebuild your whole sense of self. Full sun, any half-decent pot with drainage, water when the soil's dry. Deadhead the spent blooms, if you remember. Pinch them right off, and they flower even harder. Forget to, and they keep blooming anyway, just a little slower. Gardeners have planted them near vegetables for generations because many people find pests seem to keep their distance from the strong scent. And there's some real evidence that the roots can deter certain soil-dwelling pests called nematodes. Though I'd treat the whole natural bug shield idea as a nice bonus, not a guarantee you can build a garden around. One important note for the pet households, and this is exactly why I told you not to confuse them with calendula earlier. Unlike calendula, true Tagetes marigolds are considered mildly toxic to cats and dogs by the ASPCA, usually just stomach upset, but worth knowing before Noodle gets ideas. Get them in before July, and they'll carry color all the way to your first frost. A quick variety map so you can shop with confidence. French marigolds stay small and bushy and are perfect for pots. African, or American, marigolds get tall with big pom-pom blooms and may want a stake. And the signet types have small, lacy, edible flowers with a citrus scent if you want something a little different. Whichever you pick, sow a few extra seeds directly in the pot and thin to the strongest. They germinate so fast and so reliably that this is genuinely the plant I'd hand a nervous first-timer to prove to them they can do this. Bulletproof, cheap, and genuinely beginner-proof. Number 2, Zinnia. Zinnia elegans. Zinnias are so close to number 1 that it physically hurt to rank them here. They go from seed to a full, almost ridiculous bloom in roughly 2 months, in every color you can imagine. And here's the magic that makes them special. The more you cut them, the more they make. It's called cut and come again. Every single flower you snip for a vase signals the plant to push out 2 more. It's like they actively want to be a bouquet. For a small space, that means an almost endless supply of cut flowers from 1 or 2 pots all summer. They love heat. They're drought-tolerant once established, and they're a genuine magnet for butterflies and bees. Full sun, a pot with drainage, and here's the one real tip that makes or breaks them. Water at the base, at the soil, not over the leaves. Zinnias are prone to powdery mildew, a white, dusty coating on the foliage, if they stay wet and crowded with no airflow. So water the soil, give them a little space, and you'll sail through the season clean. Pinch the first central bud when the plant is young too, and it branches into a bushier plant with way more flowers. And after the parade of toxic entries we just went through, here's a relief. Zinnias are non-toxic to pets. Plant before July, keep cutting, and you'll be handing bouquets to your neighbors by August. Variety-wise, the big Benares Giant and State Fair types give you those huge dinner plate blooms for cutting, while the Profusion and Zahara series are low, mounded, and even more disease-resistant. Genuinely some of the most foolproof flowers sold, and my pick if you just want color and zero drama. And here's the mindset shift that makes zinnias click. Don't think of cutting them as taking flowers away. Every stem you cut for the kitchen table is a command to the plant to grow 2 more. So the greediest zinnia owner ends up with the fullest pot. The only reason they're not number 1 is that even zinnias want a bit more water than the plant we're about to meet. Number 1, Portulaca/moss rose, Portulaca grandiflora, and number 1, moss rose, Portulaca. This is the one. It's a succulent that flowers, fat little water-storing leaves like a tiny jade plant, and then these almost neon jewel-bright blooms in magenta, orange, yellow, and white that fling themselves open in the sun. And the entire personality of this plant is the thing we've been building toward all video. The hotter, drier, sunnier, and more neglected your spot is, the better it performs. It is, functionally and gloriously, a cactus that flowers. Here's why it wins, decisively. That hot, ugly, baking corner of your balcony where nothing survives. The one that gets blasted with relentless afternoon sun and that you honestly forget exists. That is moss rose's favorite place on earth. Full sun, the poorer and sandier the soil, the better. And a shallow pot is totally fine because the roots are small and it actually resents a deep, water-holding container. Water only when it's bone dry. The number one mistake, and it's basically the only way people kill it, is too much water and rich, soggy soil. It rots from kindness. So the entire move here is, plant it, and then leave it alone and trust it. From seed, it takes a couple of months, so before July matters. Or grab a small transplant from the garden center for an instant head start and skip the wait. And one honest note, since so many of you have pets, some sources, including the ASPCA, list portulaca as mildly toxic if eaten, so if Noodle is a known plant chewer, keep it just out of reach to be safe. Let me tell you why this is number one and not just a nice succulent. I forgot a pot of this stuff on my back stoop through an entire week-long heat wave last summer. No water, full afternoon sun every single day, the kind of heat that was peeling the paint off the railing. I came back from the trip fully expecting a crispy little funeral, and it was blooming. More than before I left. It looked, if anything, slightly offended that I had doubted it. That was the exact moment I stopped calling myself a plant killer. Because here was a living thing that had clearly decided to survive me no matter what I did or didn't do. And if a plant can survive me, through heat, through total neglect, through a destructive cat and a 2-week vacation, and my complete documented indifference, then it can absolutely survive you. Just promise me one thing. Get it into a pot before July, so it has the whole long summer to show off exactly how little it needs you. So there it is, 15 flowers that thrive on precisely the kind of benign neglect we specialize in, counted down to the one that bloomed through a heat wave I completely forgot about. If you only plant one thing this summer, make it the moss rose. If you plant 5, you officially have a garden now, and I'm genuinely proud of you. 2 quick things before you go. First, tell me in the comments which of these you're actually going to try, or which one you've already managed to kill, because that's useful data too, and weirdly comforting for the rest of us. Second, if this is your kind of low-effort, low-shame plant content, subscribe. There's a new one every week, all built for people who love plants and are bad at keeping them alive. And if you want more right now, I've got a whole video on the houseplants that survive the darkest, saddest apartments. Links on screen. Now go get something into a pot before July. Set it, forget it, and let it surprise you. See you next time.